Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you can take your seats, please. I hope you had a good lunch, but not too good. Be ready for this session. I apologize for any mix-ups after the first session when I directed you to the wrong rooms. But I apologize, it's because I'm an old man. It's the first time I've ever been to a conference, so I was a bit nervous. But now I know what's going on. So just so everybody knows, this session is for the packaging, yes? Is that correct? Yeah. So just in case, this is the finished vehicle logistics room. So finished vehicle logistics, technology and supply chain transformation. So this would be a short session on technology and finished vehicle logistics. One of my big bugbears is I'm not sure that we've got enough. But we will hear today what's out there, what's being done from car makers, from LSPs, and maybe in the Q&A we'll find out a little bit more about what the requirements are, what we should be doing, and are we developing in the right way from a technology perspective and the impact that it can have on finished vehicle logistics. The first session this morning, there was a lot of talk about, data, the better use of information. So I think that'll be an important part of the discussion today. So we're going to start off. We've got, again, as I said, a kind of a car maker perspective, IT service provider perspective, and a logistics service provider perspective to give us a rounded view of what's being done in this sector. So very pleased to welcome as the first speaker of this session, the first speaker of the afternoon, Deborah Buswell, the European Distribution Manager for Jaguar Land Rover. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I thought we might start, given that we've just finished lunch and we're all a bit tired, we might give you something to wake you up a little bit. So as an introduction to Jaguar Land Rover, well, here's a little bit of an overview for you.
Jaguar Land Rover revs up for their Delhi Jaguar Land Rover sold more cars in India than ever last year.
Have you ever noticed how in Hollywood movies all the villains are played by Brits?
I made my players a bit jealous because I took the car to the training grounds.
Land Rover Discovery.
We have been on an exciting and fast journey.
The XFRS, the speed, the performance, for us it's a really good fit.
Land Rover announced a partnership with Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic.
Unveiled their newest concept, Discovery Sport.
When you look at a car like Jaguar, it's about the beauty, it's about the performance.
This Discovery concept represents a vision of our future family.
Absolutely immense.
Very exciting day for children to come and demonstrate their engineering capabilities.
Decided to be an engineer.
It's an apprenticeship.
Involved work experience combined with a degree.
It's a great event.
Jaguar got on this very exciting event and I never want it to end.
We are announcing here today a new traineeship programme for the military.
Servicemen and women need this to highlight themselves as employment candidates.
And we're here today to unveil the new Dogma F8.
We're going to be making the new Discovery Sport at Haywood.
We're going to announce the new Project 7 F-Type. We do performance versions of our performance cars. We really take them to another level. S.P.A. are going to give us that opportunity. It's perfect for Jaguar.
I actually feel my body icing over.
Being selected for this team is another significant milestone in their life beyond injury.
I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
At last we can show it to the world and get a response from people who have never seen it before.
The new Discovery Sport combines design excellence, engineering integrity and exceptional versatility.
Jaguar Land Rover is really honored to introduce 2 new cars. China is the biggest automotive market on earth.
We're already calling this the engine room of Jaguar Land Rover.
And today, Jaguar Land Rover is unveiling the F-Type all-wheel drive, the manual gearshift, and The new Discovery Sport Land Rover is doubling the Land Rover brings carrying.
Okay, so follow that, no pressure. Right, so we're now looking at technological advancements, obviously. I work within finished vehicle distribution. Some of the challenges we have is around track and trace and getting real-time track and trace for our vehicles. So before we look forward and what we've recently delivered into Jaguar Land Rover, I just want to look over our shoulders and how things used to be, and in some instances still are. So predominantly, there's a lot of manual intervention. We're reliant on third parties. Certainly around our plants and compounds, we use scanning terminals, again manual by scanning barcodes. This information typically uploaded then into computers. We use typically outside of plants and compounds, we're then reliant on carrier connectivity via EDI links, which again come into the system. And all of these are not without their issues and their problems. What I would say is, and very fair to say, that Jaguar Land Rover already has 100% visibility from order to delivery worldwide. As suggested, it has its challenges. I won't go through all of them. In the main, we're very dependent on third parties, our service providers. It's not a standardized approach. Different service providers have different ways of doing things, and the timeliness of how they do things isn't always accurate. Quite often we might have a vessel that arrives at the port on a Friday afternoon, and we're waiting till Monday morning till the administrative staff come on board, and then they give us the EDI feeds to tell us that the vessel's actually arrived. Global coverage. This is not without its challenges, and although we've achieved it within JLR, the further afield markets were certainly the last to come on board, so that has been difficult to say the least. Issues around data integrity. The physical location of the vehicle versus what the system tells us. As I said, there's delays, but also when vehicles move around compounds, what's the accuracy, what's the integrity of that? And it's always questionable. We're very reliant on manual intervention for our in-market compound management. So where's the vehicle? For JLR specifically, we have a lot of disciplines around how our vehicles are treated from a quality perspective. We have the Transport Quality Manual, but how do we know if these things have been adhered to? So those are some of the issues. In addition to the track and trace and the physical location, we don't tend to know much about the maintenance of our vehicles. Key things like what's happening with the battery levels, tyre pressure. So these are some of the things that we needed to overcome, and we needed to find some way around it. Telematics. We all know that there's a necessity to have telematics fitted into our vehicles. Why? Legislation tells us it has to. E-call, B-call. So for Europe 2015, all new vehicles, there's an expectation that we have telematics embedded in the vehicles. Obviously for Brazil, there's stolen vehicle trackers, so we're already reliant on making sure those are in place. Then there's the customer demands. Our customers, they demand the latest technology. They want in-car entertainment. They want the very latest diagnostic information off their vehicles. So as motor manufacturers, we have to make sure we provide that. And that's sort of current state, but then they're looking forward. The new technology about vehicle-to-vehicle communications, driverless car, and we've heard all about driverless car and smart cities today. It's a necessity. So if we look at what the customer wants, it really is only the tip of the iceberg. If we look below the surface, what could these telematics devices, this embedded technology, what could it give to the rest of our manufacturing business? And obviously, logistics based. We'll focus on the logistics today. So the telematics can give us real-time updates of the physical location of the data. It also tells the condition of the vehicle, battery, tyre pressure, odometer, and miles to empty. This is a little bit of the techie stuff. I'm probably the least technical person you're ever going to bump into. But this is how it works. We put the technology in the vehicle, the telematic control unit, the hardware. It basically talks to the cloud, then sends a message to our mobile network operator, and then down to the telematic service provider. And I think most of us will recognize that the telematic service provider is typically then has interfaces with the headquarters, JLR headquarters in this instance, the retail customer, dealerships. But I think what's unique for Jaguar Land Rover is finished vehicle distribution, we also have a direct interface with our telematics service provider in order that we can draw on the information around the vehicle's location and maintenance. So, we have telematics in our vehicles. What have we done from a distribution perspective? Yes, we've gone in and we are exploiting the embedded end-to-end vehicle technology. We have created a full interface between ourselves, our own internal distribution systems, and the telematics service provider. As it says, integrated completely with our internal systems, and now we are actually delivering the vehicle status and the maintenance information. How does this work? Well, what we do is we create virtual fences around particular areas that we're interested in. If we want a status update of where a vehicle is, we will draw a virtual fence around it, known as a geofence. As the vehicle moves through the geofence, it will send the ping to the cloud, which then in turn goes to the TSP and tells us back at base exactly where that vehicle is, real-time, physically. So those are just the key updates that it might give us, but we can determine how much detail we want to put into that. We could, if we choose, and we may, decide to go down to parking location in a compound. But those are the typical key status updates you might recognise. In addition to location data, we are now able to extract from the vehicle, using the diagnostics, we know what the tyre pressure is. As you'll know in your compounds and in market, the first time you know you've got a flat tyre is when you can't move the vehicle. Then that disturbs the supply chain, there's delay to the customer delivery. Equally, the battery. First time you know you've got a flat battery is when the vehicle doesn't start. What we've managed to do is set predetermined levels so that if the battery drops below that level, we get an alert into our distribution system which says, can you go out in the field, check that vehicle, do what needs to be done before it doesn't start. So it doesn't interrupt the supply chain and the customer doesn't see any impact. Equally, odometer and miles to empty. This is the sort of information we are now getting into our system. So, in summary, yes, we've got real-time track and trace information. It's now being delivered. Yes, we've got real-time vehicle diagnostics and they're in place. We've developed and we've integrated our JLR systems with the TSP. And I think one of the fundamentals is Jaguar Land Rover work directly with our research teams. So with that collaboration, if they're doing something for the customer, if there are some technological advancements, we're now looking behind and saying, what else can it do for the business? So this is the first significant change, but there will be further developments and applications to continue. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Thank you very much, Debbie, and it's great to see that that's been introduced at Jaguar Land Rover and will make a huge... It's something that everyone talks about, and it's good to see that someone's putting into action. Next presentation will come from Hartmut Halbrich, the Director of Finished Vehicle Logistics from Inform. Thank you, Hartmut.
Thank you. Dear audience, thank you very much, Louis, for your introduction. Today's presentation is about what has been identified this morning as one of the key resources in finished vehicle logistics and automotive logistics as a whole, which is about data. And when it comes to data, it's not about only having this data, but also sharing it in the right way with the right people to come up with the right measures and the right decisions. And this is what the talk will be about. It's about an integrated finished vehicle logistics and demonstrating how that can drive efficiency and customer satisfaction. So as mentioned this morning, there is a number of influences on the networks plants open and close. There is new infrastructure and carrier opportunities coming up. There is a vast amount of new model launches, as we have also seen this morning. There is the importance of the delivery to promise, so-called Amazon question. And there is also disruptive events, like volcanoes, earthquake, freezing, other events. So all that calls for planning and action. So as this kind of transition in the network has become more normal, some people even call that the new normal, that things are changing. So we feel there is a need to adapt the network more frequently to what is actually happening. And also better manage the VIN in the supply chain. And one of these opportunities, you have seen that in the preceding presentation very nicely. So for the integrated approach, it starts with the question, what is the right network for a given VIN volume? So plants producing cars, dealers in certain regions needing these cars. So what is the right network to cover that? If that has been identified in a first step, then in a second step, you are looking into actual VIN movements. So you need to manage the VIN in the supply chain accordingly. And then it's important to, in a performance management step, compare what you have been planning to what you have actually been doing and how that has been going. So I have been working in aviation before, and there is a similarity in aviation. So if things are not planned according to what is then later really happening, this happens, so to say, in silence. This is hard to notice, that if something has not been accurately planned. So in the operation stage, there is a lot of rush to catch up on that. But then later in the performance management, you may see that the root cause for some operational issues could have been overcome by a more accurate network planning. And this is the feedback loop which we would like to highlight and to suggest. So not only learn from the performance management and talk to the operations people, but also take some learnings back to the setup of the overall network. So with this integrated workflow for a finished vehicle logistics business, the networks can be adapted faster. This leads to a more efficient and also a more reliable network because it has been designed to what it's actually doing. And there is a self-optimizing process through the feedback loop. So if we look at a little more detail at the first component, which is the network planning component, we have plants, we have models, we have thousands of dealers worldwide, destinations. Then we have the complexity of the network with ports, terminals. We have the different transport modes. So the challenge in the network planning is to find a solution with lowest total cost for a complex network. On top of that, there is the well-known constraints on capacity, on lead time, but there is also some restrictions that need to be applied in order to come to a manageable network. So as two examples only out of this field, a limited number of carriers should do the distribution into one region. So the optimum solution may be to split that even further, but experience from a manageability point of view tells that it is better to have clear responsibility and perhaps leave the last bit of the optimization open to keep the network manageable. The second effect is that, for example, a carrier should offer all transports in a certain region to avoid what is known in the industry as cherry picking. So the combination of a complex network plus these restrictions needs quite some powerful optimization, but up-to-date optimization can handle this even for large data sets, and we will see an example soon. So when preparing a tender, and this is a somewhat bigger scenario, then locations are entered and connections are entered. And then the question is, what is the cost of the according legs? Some of this cost may already be there. Other cost may be needed to get that from the carrier. And here it comes to IT platforms who can help on this to reduce the amount of work which is typically involved in doing the RFQs. So in the network planning component, the tender is prepared, as we saw. Then it's published on the web, and the carriers can connect to the RFQ, see what's in there, read all the documentation, come up with the quotes, and these quotes are loaded into the optimization module. Just seamless. And then with this optimization mode, it's possible to optimize for a least cost network. So in this example, we have the locations and the connections. We get all the carrier rates for the from the RFQ portal. We throw this at the optimizer, and we do that in one go. All possibilities, throw that at the optimizer. And the optimizer will determine the best locations to be used and will determine the least cost routing. So when the optimizer comes up with a certain result, people may want to understand what he came up with and analyze these results. So in the according departments, you see lots of maps, and this is what IT can also provide. Heat maps, for example, volume per region or cost per region, so-called Sankey diagrams after the inventor of this, Mr. Sankey, to visualize flows and how they are interconnected, and also to come up with more detailed charts to analyze what has been going on in the calculation, what the result is. In this example, there is a pie chart per region for more detailed distribution information, for example, on the models. So with this network optimization being done, the result goes back to the carriers in order to confirm that the volume that he has been assigned is in fact also feasible. Yeah? Carriers may offer all kinds of routes and expect to be assigned certain routes from experience, and then the result comes up, so there is a step needed to really confirm this capacity. Depending on that result, a re-optimization may be necessary, and this can go certain steps. If, for example, the price depends on the volume, then that may be a little iteration needed here to come up with the final setup, and this is then can be implemented. So as a result from the network planning component, carriers and contracts are determined, and the default VIN routing through the network is expected. So now we have covered the first step in the integrated solution, which is the network planning. Now let's have a quick look at the operations part, and this is the track and also known as track and trace. So in the first step, we are now looking at individual vehicles. So individual vehicles have individual needs on services. They may need homologation. They may need personalization. There may be additional things that are done during the supply chain. And that needs to be taken into account when routing vehicles. So based on this, the route is determined. And last but not least, the estimated time of arrival at the dealer is calculated based on this. So estimated time of arrival being also called the Amazon question. First question is, I want to have this vehicle. Second question is, when can I have it? And the ETA is increasingly important to meet this. So this information is then visualized in a so-called ETA screen. On the left-hand side, there is the various steps in the chain. Then there is a planned date for each step and an actual date for each step, depending on where in the chain the vehicle currently is. So now the VIN starts to get moved. All kinds of updates are received that can come from compound management systems, that can come from handhelds by scanning, that may come from interfaces, among others, the system that we have just seen. So that could be integrated here for real update information and see how the VIN is moving through the chain. And then the interesting aspect is that with having a plan for each step in mind, this can be compared against what is actually happening. So if something goes wrong, for example, on the way to the port, then it may be important to notice that early in order to still be able to do something about that before it actually happened. So in this case, homologation could be speeded up, and the homologation center could get a signal of, we have certain VINs, they will arrive slightly late, but please treat these VINs first, then we make up for the time delay. So alerts are created to support this. There are other basic functions in this kind of modules, like searching VINs regardless of where they are, real-time information, book VINs to transports. Then it's the area of damages and claims handling, which is integrated in the same system to reduce double entry of data. There is holds applied and removed to control the vehicle in the chain, which typically leads to slow it down because something needs to be done. But there is also the possibility to change the priority and by that speeding it up. Speeding it up is maybe important to meet estimated time of arrivals. So there is different concepts on speeding VINs up. The first is just leave it on the existing route and change the order of the priority in which you handle the VIN in a local component. That also allows certain reaction to get important VINs moved. Then there is the second alternative to choose the route and or the transport mode, which helps to speed up, for example, a train that will not make it by train could still make it by truck. And only as a last step, the updating of the estimated time of arrival should be considered sort of as a last resort. So with this improved ETA rate, we meet another component of customer satisfaction in an improved way. So with the integrated approach, we have looked at the VIN management. Let's have a quick look into performance management. So there is dashboards with interactive filtering. There is selection of certain data, all this by use of so-called in-memory technology to also work fast on big data sets. There is multi-currency to have an overview about the transport from a financial point of view. Then there is more local views. So if I'm responsible for a compound, I would like to have a quick look on KPIs like holds, like damages, like inventory, like aging of the stock. There is more details on inbound and outbound flow analysis, always with a plan and actual comparison given. Last but not least, there is the lead time analysis to study the duration of each step, where it's not only about the average time, but also about the variation in time, which is important and which needs to be paid attention for. So for a route from a plant to a number of dealers, there are various steps involved in that. So analyzing the lead times in this area also gives important hints at the performance. So with having said this, there is a number of learnings and even, let's say, areas for improvement that may have been identified. So this allows to feed that back into the network planning, also into the VIN management, and to take action on what was identified. So with such an integrated solution, and by sharing data to a broader audience, there is a defined and common tool-driven process. There is the self-optimizing process through the feedback loop, which leads to higher customer satisfaction with a higher reliability ETA. Secondly, there is an improved visibility on vehicle movements, but also on key performance indicators and dashboard-driven monitoring, events and alerts, which leads to faster root cause analysis of exceptions. And last but not least, there is savings by higher agility, better responding to changes in the network, implementing that fast, optimizing for this. Freight cost reductions could be achieved through better planning. A more stable network can be achieved through better planning. And cost reductions on exceptions through proactive reactions can be achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hartmann. Thank you very much, Hartmann, for giving us a presentation looking at other areas where the technology can have a high and important impact. Next up, to hear a logistics service provider's perspective, I'd like to welcome to the podium Michael Blach, the board member of the board of BLG Logistics. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks. So first, Louis, I would like to thank you and Automotive Logistics for getting a chance to share some views here at the conference. And I'll try to maybe focus more on a helicopter view on what are some of the issues and possibilities in terms of utilizing technology. I will try to frame a little bit from the context relevant to a service provider. And I'll try to talk about the opportunities, the enablers, drivers, obstacles, and in that context, what is BLG trying to do to, despite various obstacles, to progress and succeed in terms of utilizing new and modern technology. So, first of all, there's absolutely no doubt that over the past few years, there has been very vast improvements that has generated many new opportunities and possibilities in terms of what you actually can do with the help of technology. So what do we have? We have much stronger and faster connectivity. We have a host of web-based systems, if that's what you choose to operate with. You have chances of real-time information through RFID, smart apps, and all sorts of other technologies. And as has been mentioned here, I think already 10 times today, is of course the ever-increasing and very interesting, yet also very complex, but also very promising area of big data. You gather all this data, you have it in one or typically in many, many systems, and what do you do with it, and how do you actually benefit from it? So a critical issue, of course, first of all, to ask yourself, if you're a service provider, is what is it actually your customers want? And we are certainly in a situation in the business that we are in, and I think many in here today are probably in the same boat, that we are faced with customers who want continuously lowering of prices. They would like to have a very high quality at low cost. They would like to have high flexibility in terms of service, and they would also like that you as a service provider come up and continuously innovate, either to get an improved process or to take costs out of the system, or in other ways actually make the product you offer either cheaper or better, or if even possible, maybe both. So again, in terms of the framing, what is the market situation that we are in here in Europe? We have a situation after the world financial crisis where we have a relatively stable market. It has improved somewhat, obviously, since 2008 and 9, and the automotive industry actually recovered in many parts, or at least in Northern Europe, much faster than many other industries. But still, the number of vehicles sold is still not where it used to be. The growth that we are looking at are relatively modest. The market is pretty stable. The players in the market are the same. We have, as I alluded to before, we have margin pressure. We have an expectation at least, or a push for, as a supplier in the industry or as a service provider in the industry, to accept worsening contract conditions. We have uncertain volume developments, and we have very high fluctuations. Despite various efforts, we also see that the forecasting quality is still relatively poor, and the sharing of data early in high quality and so on, there are still many things to be done. And basically all of this leads to a situation where, despite insufficient margins, at least by BLG, we have concluded that we must continue to invest in IT, we must continue to invest in technology, and we must continue to try to modernize and make our systems more effective. So the implementation of complex IT systems to maybe not to forecast better, but then at least to come to a way that we can predict better, to plan better, operate better, and in general improve our operations. Some of the key challenges that we are having is obviously that there's still a tendency to piecemeal the tendering, meaning that you have a huge business as an OEM, for example, but in terms of actually going to offer that business, you go through various tenders processes, and it's very difficult to combine, to make concepts, to make what-if tendering and conditional tendering responses, because the various pieces are offered individually, and they are also offered away at different times. For many parts of the business, there are relatively short-term contracts. There are contracts with very limited guarantees, if any guarantee at all, in terms of the volume that you actually see. And the tendering is very often still today based on as is. So, you know, the way we did it yesterday is also the way we do it tomorrow. And there's less focus on innovation and new solutions. Although it has to be said that this, of course, is not a one-way street. As a service provider, we, of course, are also obliged to very early on and way before the tender process to engage with the people in the industry and propose new ways and new solutions and be clever enough to actually also get to the stage that some of these things will be worked into the tender processes, so that next time around you have a way of actually doing things better and more efficiently. So one of the ways of overcoming some of those challenges that we are seeing to implement ever more complex but yet also user-friendly and flexible IT systems. The issue of big data, I think for many companies this is still at a very early stage. It is an issue of how to manage, to analyze and actually extract benefits and learnings out of big amounts of data, and to try to collect maybe more process-oriented rather than just status-oriented data for your own processes and your own operations to actually get better feedback in terms of how you can do things better, and then try to improve the exchange of data in general, but forecasting in specific with all the people that you're cooperating with, be that customers or be that partners across the logistics chain. And finally, a few words on some of the developments that we have been going through in BLG over the past year or so, is that we have been implementing an operating system, an IT system that basically cuts across most part of our service portfolio. So we are integrating the trucking fleet, the inland terminals, the ocean terminals, and the technical centers in one system that allows us to be much better in terms of planning our processes and improving our processes. We are also going to eventually aim to integrate rail in that as well. We have implemented telematics for the entire German trucking fleet, so for a fleet of about plus minus 400 trucks. We have gone from a lot of manual planning, old-fashioned planning, into having a completely different and modern view and support to actually plan tours and to do optimization, reduce empty mileage, and all the things that goes with it. And finally, we are far in the preparations of introducing a real-time automatic routing of vehicles at our main hub in Bremerhaven. It doesn't mean that the vehicles, at least not yet, are going to run around all by themselves. This is probably going to come in 5, 10, or 20 years, but we are not there yet. But at least an automated way of actually managing the flows, where we have up to about 90,000 vehicles at any time, and to do this in small chunks certainly is less effective than having a complete overview of our operations. So, in rounding off, there are many, many opportunities. There are also many, many challenges, and it is for both the customers that we are serving, but certainly also for ourselves to, if you will, poke a little bit at the status quo, to try to introduce changes. Jan Maas from Daimler mentioned earlier that they had some challenges in terms of combining import or inbound and outbound. And of course, one appreciation you have to have in terms of the big German OEMs is that they're very, very large organizations. And it's easy to say that everybody who are involved in purchasing, in operations and planning should all cooperate for the greater benefit and for the greater good. It is a bit more complex than this, but we all have to try to find ways that look more holistically at things and to get away from the piecemealing that in many parts of our industry is very, very commonplace. So thank you for allowing me to share a few words and thoughts on where we are on this at BLG. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Michael. Again, giving us some of the challenges and solutions of trying to implement the right systems and what BLG themselves and an example of what a logistics companies are doing in this area. So now we get to the Q&A or interaction. So it's a chance for you to, again, to ask your questions, give your comments, agreeing, or even better, disagreeing with the panel. So the usual rules apply. Please raise your hand, wait for the microphone, say your name and your company name, and ask a question. So again, initially, I'd like to throw it out to the audience and see if you've got any questions. And again, I will give you the reminder that I do have questions. So by not asking a question, it doesn't mean you're getting out to the coffee break earlier. It just means that you're going to have to listen to my questions, which is even worse. So if anyone wants to ask the first question. The very young gentleman in the kind of front middle.
Thank you. Mike Sturgeon from ECG, and obviously I don't want to listen to Louis' questions, so I had to think of one, and to prove to Debbie that I did manage to stay awake. So, actually, a question for Debbie, which is to do with RFID, and Michael mentioned it in his presentation. I'm aware now that finally, after many years of talking about it, some OEMs are now going down the RFID route. I know if Manuel Medina's in the room, I was with him a couple of weeks ago and saw it in action with S.P.A. I know Mazda are looking at it, and others are trialling it in different areas. There doesn't appear to be any coordination, but you mentioned particularly needing manual intervention and for compound management and things like that, and I wondered whether RFID was something that JLR had looked at, and if so, is there a reason why you're not going down that route?
RFID is something JLR looked at many years ago, and we've had it in place in our plants for some time now. I think we are now looking at further advancements, and RFID quite often requires quite a bit of infrastructure, which can be costly. And if you're looking at perhaps very quickly wanting to create a remote compound, RFID is not necessarily the way forward for us. So yes, we've already used RFID. It's been very good. It's been very useful, particularly in plants. But I think technological advancements these days have moved beyond that.
Okay. Interesting that there's clearly other OEMs that have decided it's the way to go now. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. A question from me to Debbie as well is the cost benefit. There must have been, some kind of cost involved in putting in these systems. Was it easy to justify the investment, and what was your strongest angle in justifying that? Was it the quality? Was it cost savings?
The cost save for implementing telematics. Mm-hmm. It was minimal cost because obviously we have to implement telematics anyway. Legislation insists we do that, it's mandatory. Mm-hmm. So I think it's an additional business benefit we've added because we recognise that having real-time information and also quality information about our vehicles wasn't costing us anymore because the data, the information is there. It's the innovation around realising that information is there and us deciding to utilise it. So it provides us with cost benefits, but that there wasn't significant on-cost to us utilising the telematics information.
The perfect solution, cost benefits without having to spend any money. Yeah. Yeah. Question from the middle there.
My name is Ruud Vossenbelt from Inform. Deborah, it was a very interesting presentation about telematics. You mentioned e-call as a legislative requirement for the coming years. Do you think that all the car makers need telematics in the car? And does it mean that all of them could make use of the telematics then also to do the track and trace using the telematics?
Legislation demands that we have telematics, or we have e-call, and telematics provides e-call, certainly for Europe 2015. So I would suggest that yes, and lots of other motor manufacturers are ahead of JLR with their introduction of telematics. But we have no choice. We have to make sure that the vehicles have it. So I would assume that yes, everybody will be doing it. Whether they track and trace, I don't know. I don't believe anybody else is as yet.
One other question. Do you think then that the shippers who now do a lot of scanning, barcoding scanning at the compounds, for example, could use your information without that they do the scanning and create extra efficiency maybe in their compounds?
I am absolutely sure that the way forward will be for others to utilise the real-time and the telematic opportunities. So yes, I would suggest that shippers could, and many others.
Thank you.
So which leads to an interesting point about who should make the investment, and because you're doing what you've just explained very clearly, but Michael also from BLG in his presentation said that they've put telematics in all of their truck fleet in Germany. One of the problems with big data is that there's too much, and is there double investment? Who should be investing and leading the way in this kind of, in introducing the right technology for finished vehicle logistics? Should it be the car makers? Should it be the LSPs? Who should lead this investment? Otherwise, it seems that you might just be doubling up and a million different systems developing along the way. So that's for all three of you, really. And maybe I'll start with Michael as the LSP, then the IT provider, and then back to Debbie.
Yeah, we of course have a great hope that the auto industry will, in terms of identification of vehicles, will introduce systems that are similar, so that we as a supplier and as a service provider can actually use that to identify that. It's very clear that knowing where the vehicle is at any time and to building this into your own systems is going to be critical in the future. But if there's no common solution by the manufacturers, then somebody needs to attach this or install this or hang this or put it in the car or some way get this done, and this has to be less efficient than this being done from the get-go. Huh? Mm-hmm. So we are very hopeful, but we also know that there has been a lot of attempts, and there seems to be no real common view in how to do that.
Hartmut, as one of the service IT companies.
Yeah. So this is a I would call that a huge opportunity to come up with something that has been standardized from a legal point of view. That there is a huge opportunity to come up with a common platform and common mechanisms to share on this information. The first is getting the information, and we have seen a very good example for that. The second is sharing that information appropriately for every stakeholder to take advantage of the data. So this, if it goes well, then there is a standardized platform to which everybody can connect. If it stays, let's say, a more OEM-driven approach, then integrators will probably come in and bridge that to the various stakeholders in the market.
Mm-hmm. And Debbie, should the car makers lead, or do you want your providers to do that?
I think it should be a collaboration. I think absolutely it has to be a standardised solution, and it's in such infancy at the moment. But now that we're learning more about it, I think ideally with the sharing of information, that coming up with a common platform that we can all use is the ideal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I hope it's not one of those conversations that becomes in 10 years, that we say, wouldn't it be good if? And in 10 years' time, we're still saying, wouldn't it be good if? I'd like to throw that back at Mike Sturgeon at ECG. ECG is a perfect organisation to try and develop this kind of standard. Are you doing anything on that side? I know you're doing a whole lot of standardisation efforts at ECG. Is ECG doing anything to try and develop standard visibility tools or telematics?
In short, no. We're working on a number of things, but not in those areas. And I'm not convinced that we necessarily have the right forum to do that. Mm-hmm. Although I do like your comment that ECG is a perfect organisation.
It is. Any question from this side?
My name is Andreas Reicher-Kohlmann from Unicar, independent inspection company, Deborah. I listened carefully to your presentation and also from Inform Hartmut. What I miss, you transport all kinds of information in your telematic systems, battery level, tire pressure level. What's about the damage information? Because damaged cars will arrive delayed or will arrive to the dealer, can't be delivered to the end customer. Is it just missing, or do you like to not transport this information on purpose?
No, the information that we get from telematics comes directly from the CAN bus and the ECU, so it can't tell you about the external damage on a vehicle. It could potentially tell you about tampering and the like, but from a quality perspective, I think we are looking at technological advancements, but it won't be part of the telematics. It will be further development.
Yeah, from an IT solution perspective, damage handling and also claims handling is part of the solution. So it's not about telematics here, but it's about the classical scanning of the vehicle, recording the damage, even taking a picture of the damage, even sorting out damaged VINs if they are decided to move ahead. So on the next station, the damaged vehicle could be sorted out. So the damage handling and claims handling is an important part of an integrated solution.
Okay. At the front first, and then we'll go.
My name is Michael Bunning from BLG. I'm sorry, Debbie, I have another question to you, but you mentioned, or I understood your presentation in this direction that you pay a very, very high focus on the IT and on the transparency and on the visibility of the supply chain. So will you also implement those requirements in your tenders process in the future, that as we say, okay, we want to have such solutions, we want to have these and these informations, and if anybody is not able to provide that, they are perhaps not in the position to win the tender?
I think one of the key messages that came from the presentation is there isn't a reliance on a third party. The information is held in the individual vehicles, and then it's transmitted directly into our systems. So we're not reliant on our service providers any longer to tell us about where the physical location is of a vehicle. So it wouldn't be necessary as part of a tender, because we're taking the ownership of that ourselves.
Thank you. Question in the middle there. That's it. Thanks.
Very good afternoon. Alistair Newton, Sovereign Business. This is for you, Debbie. I don't want to sort of speak as a consumer, not that I've recently bought a Jaguar. Unfortunately, I had to sell my Defender 90 TD5 recently. But how has telematics affected the communication between you and the dealership, and how has that affected the consumer's message, or the actual experience? That you've obviously invested the time and effort into telematics and greater visibility, track and trace, but what sort of message are you getting back from your dealerships? Is there better confidence in that the ETA has improved, or just want to try and understand a little bit more from that perspective?
I think using telematics enhances the communication. That's the key thing, because the communication is in real time. At the moment, we're using the information complementary to what we already have in place. So we can tell that, yes, the communications are quicker in real time. The feedback from the dealerships is very, very much in its infancy. As I suggested, we've got quite some way to go before we get a really firm handle on what their feelings are. But from my perspective, it can only be a positive.
There's a question further back. That's it.
Jim Cleary from DHL. Sorry, it's another telematics type question.
I knew I should have spoken about something else.
Do you think the introduction of telematics can be advantageous in other areas of the supply chain? I mean, when the vehicle's with the end customer, that there could be a usage of certain types of cloud-based vehicle maintenance routines. We know vehicles to reduce the off-the-road time experience with end users.
That's absolutely it. That's the key thing around the maintenance information. Typically, if there are issues with battery, flat tyres, etc., then the vehicle is taken off the road. It has to be moved, go to a dealer to get rectified, or whatever else happens. The fact that we've got pre-knowledge before the vehicle actually stops or the battery is completely flat means that we don't interrupt the supply chain, that we can keep the vehicle moving and it achieves the customer promise date.
But even when the vehicle's sold, there is warranty and maintenance routines that go in the life of the vehicle.
That would be for the customer. The telematics track and trace is disabled at the point of PDI at dealership. We don't track a customer vehicle.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we can see the next obvious thing, which will be the NSA tracking the vehicles. Louis. Hello, Frank Britz, APL Logistics. This is one for Hartman. He's not had many questions after even the school. As much as I could tell Debbie, of course, I still have my Jaguar. But Helmut, 30 years ago, I was working for Decision Support Systems for an AT&T organisation. And I hear your story, and it takes me back many years. Now, one of the problems that I have at the moment when I receive tenders is, of course, they ask me to cost particular routes. Now, there is the concept of synergy, and if I don't know how many of the routes or which set of routes I might get, it's difficult to put back synergistic pricing. So, you know, the intake from the 20 organisations in the industry may mean that there isn't an optimum set of pricing, and a better set might be available. Any comments on that?
Well, that's an interesting question when it comes to backhaul from one and the same OEM. What we are more envisaging is that backhaul is coming from different OEMs. So you are creating synergies in your way of routing the trucks through the network, if we come to a typical example of trucks. So in that respect, the synergy would come out of your network, which would allow you to offer certain routes at a more favorable price probably than others. So as you can see the entirety of what is proposed in the tender, and you can see that even in a visual way inside the web portal, we think that this will follow a vision that was put out earlier, that the carriers should have more visibility of what the OEM needs to adapt that with what they could offer as providing a synergy. So by this, in sharing more information on the network and on the tender, giving more analysis on that one, should allow you to better come up with the prices based on synergies.
Okay. Any more questions? In the middle, from a perfect organisation.
I think we'll start putting that on our letterhead. I wanted to, it's all right, Debbie, I wanted to respond to Alistair this time, which was to, Alistair raised the issue about was the track and trace functionality used to enhance by the dealers or to enhance the consumer experience. And in 2001, we had real-time track and trace in the UK for delivery of all Toyota and Lexus cars. And we stopped it because the dealers didn't use the information, is the short answer. They continued to build in their own 3 or 4 days extra. Cars continued to, on average, spend 7 days at the dealership between delivery and handover to customer. You know, we developed a screen so that they could actually sit the customer down and say, look, there's your car. If it was on the back of a truck en route to the dealership, they could even see what speed that truck was doing down the motorway. But they didn't use the information. And ultimately, after 18 months or something, we stopped it. No, it's not lack of education. I think it's dealers tend to have a traditional way of working, and it's very difficult to change that. They build in their own allowances. When they sign a customer order, they say, well, the system says it'll be here on this date, so they add a week, promise it to the customer on that date, because they never trust logistics anyway. However good we get, however much information we give them, the average dealer will never trust a date that he's given on a screen. And I think it will take a very, very long time to change that, unfortunately. So there are many benefits from all of these systems, certainly for the OEMs and so forth. But I think for the dealers and the customers, I think the benefits are still, unfortunately, a long way away.
And I, of course, add on another 3 or 4 days from that date to when I'm telling my wife when her car's being delivered, just to save myself any headaches. So. Any more questions? Right, I think I'll change tack a little bit and ask a different person a question. Debbie. I'm just getting some revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steve Stokes and Debbie tend to tease me a little bit at our conferences, so I've waited for this chance for a while, so I'm going to take advantage of it. You said you implemented the visibility globally. There's some regions that are particularly tough, both from a physical infrastructure as well as a technology infrastructure. Which I don't know if you can name those regions, and what did you do to overcome? You said it took that bit longer. Mm-hmm. What did you do to overcome those issues in those places?
The coverage in the more remote areas is no different to that it is in Europe, and obviously I focus on the European market, so I can't tell you about those that were last, or but it's through carrier connectivity, and it's about getting those connections set up, and it's about each service provider having the appropriate IT structure to enable the IT integration, but that's how we've established it.
Mm-hmm. Question at the front middle. We're going to have to get a younger team in, I think. Those guys are getting so slow. People more my age will be good.
Debbie, another question for you.
This is so much fun, Louis.
What I hear a lot in the RFID area is that on big parking places they like to have a very accurate positioning of a car. Mm-hmm. And they talk about 1 to 3 meter accurate. Mm-hmm. How accurate can your telematics solution be, and can it work on the parking place to find exactly the car back?
It's, as I said, I'm not really the technical person. However, it's down to kind of 2 car parking spaces, roughly speaking, is what you can get it down to. So it's as, it's pretty close.
Okay. Any more questions? I don't know if we've come to the end of the Deborah Buswell show and her guests. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the panel for a great session there. Thank you. I think we're all back into one room after the coffee break. Just one question. This was a technology session, and we've implemented Automotive Logistics Live on your smartphones and your tablets. Just with a show of hands, because I've got a feeling it's not worth asking you on any kind of technology, how many people have used that so far today? Okay, well, that tells you something about technology in the finished vehicle logistics industry. So, yeah. So thank you very much. Enjoy your coffee break hosted by Jeff Cohn. We'll see you back in the afternoon for a session on supply chain. Thank you.